All right, let's get right to it. Welcome in. I'm TH, a certified flight instructor. Whether you're managing a single aircraft or commanding a massive commercial fleet, I want to welcome all of you, pilots who are taking this lesson to take their skills and careers to the absolute next level. Today, we're diving into a real professional masterclass on the regulatory foundation of our communications. We're talking about the Federal Communications Commission's 47 CFR Part 87. We're going to systematically unpack the regulations governing aviation radio station licenses. Now, as professionals, we all know flying the actual aircraft is really only half the job, right? Operating with absolute legal and regulatory precision, that is exactly what separates the novices from the veterans. So let's make sure your operational integrity is rock solid. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, requirement and exceptions. Number 2, basic license eligibility. Number 3, filing your application. Number 4, the license term. And finally, number 5, partial grants and protests. Let's dive in.
Section 1, requirement and exceptions. Navigating Section 87.18.
Notice the absolute clarity of the baseline rule from the FCC here. The regulation states precisely, except as noted, stations in the aviation service must be licensed by the FCC either individually or by fleet. As an advancing pilot or a fleet operator, you really need to internalize this. Licensing is literally not an option. It's the mandatory default. Whether you decide to pull a single license for one specific tail number or you secure a comprehensive fleet license, the FCC demands that your station is officially authorized. There's just no way around it. However, the regulation does provide a highly specific carve-out. This is what we call being licensed by rule. So an aircraft station actually doesn't need that individual piece of paper issued by the FCC if, and literally only if, it meets all of these exact parameters. First, it's not required by statute, treaty, or international agreement to actually carry a radio. Second, it does not make international flights. And third, it does not make international communications. Basically, if your operation is strictly domestic and completely avoids these triggers, while the FCC grants you the privilege of operating by rule.
But let me be perfectly clear about this, my fellow aviators. Escaping the individual paperwork absolutely does not exempt your operation from the law. Even though a physical piece of paper isn't required, an aircraft station that's licensed by rule still has to be operated in strict, unyielding accordance with all applicable operating requirements, procedures, and technical specifications found in Part 87. Ignorance of the technical standard is never ever a valid defense. You still have to play by the rules.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, Basic License Eligibility. Navigating Section 87.19.
The regulations pull absolutely no punches when it comes to aeronautical en-route and fixed stations. The FCC outlines explicitly who cannot hold these station licenses. First up, foreign governments or their representatives. Out. Second, any alien or their representative. Out. And third, any corporation organized under the laws of a foreign government. For those of you who are transitioning into corporate or commercial fleet management, this is absolutely crucial. You have to ensure your operating entity has zero conflict with these foundational citizenship requirements.
Now, we need to painstakingly unpack the mathematical thresholds of the corporate ownership rules because this is where it gets a little dense. Notice the distinction between direct corporate ownership versus indirect corporate control. If a corporation has more than 1/5, so that's 20%, of its capital stock directly owned or voted by foreign entities, it's totally ineligible. Done. However, when we look at indirect control, meaning a corporation controlled by a parent company, the threshold shifts. If more than 1/4 or 25% of the parent corporation's stock is owned by foreign entities, well, that triggers a regulatory review. You must know these exact fractions inside and out. 1/5 for direct, 1/4 for indirect.
Now, there's a very specific caveat regarding that indirect control rule we just talked about. The FCC retains the ultimate discretionary power. The regulation states that the license will be denied if the Commission finds that the public interest will be served by the refusal or revocation. So the FCC basically holds the ultimate trump card, the veto power over our national communications and aviation infrastructure. You have to understand that the corporate structuring behind your fleet directly, legally impacts your right to transmit.
All right, Section 3, filing your application. Navigating Section 87.25.
When you're dealing with the FCC, administrative precision is honestly just as important as your crosswind landing technique. You simply cannot afford to have your paperwork rejected on a minor technicality. Section 87.25 dictates that applications must be filed in strict accordance with Part 1, Subpart F. Furthermore, any applications that require fees, which is most of them, must be submitted exactly as set forth in Part 1, Subpart G. That's specifically Section 0.401b.
Knowing exactly which subparts govern your routing and your fees ensures your fleet remains legally sound and is never grounded or delayed by completely avoidable clerical errors.
Now, comparing the types of fleet applications, it's brilliant how the FCC actually allows for consolidation to streamline operations for large-scale professional aviators. Under paragraphs C and D, the FCC lets you consolidate. Instead of filing an individual, standalone application for every single tail number in your hangar, you can submit one single aircraft fleet application that covers all your aircraft stations. And similarly, one single land station fleet application can cover all aeronautical land stations in a fleet. When you think about it, that is a massive, massive reduction in administrative friction. Building on that efficiency, paragraph E addresses the modification or transfer of control for multiple stations. You can actually submit one combined application for this, but, and this is a big but, only if 3 exact elements are identical across all the station licenses involved. Number 1, the applicant must be exactly the same. Number 2, the specific details of the request must be identical. And number 3, the rule part governing them must match perfectly. Align these 3 specific parameters, and you're going to save your operation significant time and resources.
Let's move to Section 4, the license term. Navigating Section 87.27.
The regulations provide a pretty stark contrast depending entirely on the nature of your operations. For standard aviation services, licenses are normally issued for a highly stable term of 10 years. That's 10 years from the date of original issuance or renewal, which provides a lot of long-term certainty for your fleet. Now contrast that directly with developmental stations. If your operation is out there pushing the envelope, working with experimental tech, those licenses are heavily restricted. They are issued for a period not to exceed 1 single year. It's a much shorter leash. And you really must fully understand the inherent vulnerability of those developmental licenses. Section 87.27, paragraph B, contains what I consider a pretty severe warning. Developmental stations are subject to change or cancellation by the Commission at any time. All it takes is reasonable notice, and crucially, they can execute this cancellation without a hearing. No hearing at all. So if you are managing a developmental program, you are operating at the absolute discretion of the FCC, and you must be professionally prepared for that exact contingency. Finally, Section 5, Partial Grants and Protests. Navigating Section 87.29. Imagine this scenario. The FCC grants your application without a hearing, but they grant it only in part. Or worse, they attach privileges and conditions that you absolutely did not request. What happens next? Well, the real danger here is default acceptance. The rule explicitly states that the FCC's action will automatically be considered as a full grant, encompassing all those unrequested conditions unless you actively and legally contest it. If you just silently take that license and file it away in a cabinet, you have legally accepted terms that might severely restrict your future flight operations. So, the absolutely crucial point to remember here is this number, 30. You have an unforgiving, strict 30-day window. The clock starts ticking the exact day the grant is made or from its effective date. You have exactly 30 days to take legal action to protect your operational privileges. If day 31 rolls around, those unrequested terms, they're locked in for good.
So to defend your fleet, you have to follow this exact 2-step procedure. Step 1, immediately and thoroughly audit any new license grant to identify any unrequested conditions or partial denials. Don't just assume it's what you asked for. Step 2, if discrepancies exist, file a formal written protest with the Commission before that 30-day window slams shut. Guys, this isn't just pushing paperwork, this is actively defending the legal standing and capability of your aviation enterprise.
Fellow aviators, we've just conducted a rigorous professional deep dive into the foundational licensing rules of FCC Part 87. And I want to leave you with a provocative thought as you step back out onto the flight line or head back into the chief pilot's office. Based on the exacting standards we just unpacked today, is every single aircraft in your fleet strictly compliant right now? Especially those you might just assume are simply operating by rule. I highly challenge you to audit your own operations immediately. Complacency has absolutely no place in the cockpit, and it certainly has no place in regulatory compliance. Thank you for joining me, TH, for this explainer. Keep your skills sharp, your communications legal, and as always, fly safe.